Hi, welcome to the Mindset Junkie podcast. I am your host, Seamus Fox. I created this podcast to inspire people like you, people who want to create change in their lives but possibly feel stuck. I love speaking with guests from all over the world who have created change in their own mindsets so that they can be the best and the highest version of themselves. They have greater impact on this world. So strap yourself in and enjoy the Mindset Junkie journey. Hi guys, so welcome back to the Mindset Junkie podcast. Today's guest is a former UFC fighter, a former bare knuckle fighter, and also the Ultimate Fighter finalist, Artem Lobov. Artem, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Seamus. It's good to chat to you.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on, man. Artem, what I like to do for guests and also for the listeners is kind of take things back to the start. A lot of people probably know you as a fighter, etc. But how did that actually start? Where did you get into fighting? What was it like as a young Artem growing up? Where did you grow up? And what were those like early experiences and inspirations like?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I haven't, I have, I guess, a little bit of a unique story in terms of how I started. Because a lot of the guys in combat sports, they start very young. They either started boxing, like Connor, for example. He was boxing since he was 9. Others, they wrestle or something else. Whereas I didn't actually start training until I was 21. And to be honest, I always wanted to be a fighter, like not to be a fighter, but I always wanted to do martial arts. When I was a kid, I remember begging my mom to let me do boxing or something, and she would always say, no, you'll get your nose broken. So she never allowed me to do it. And instead, I actually had to do ballroom dancing as a kid. I did ballroom dancing for about 5 years, since I was 7 till I was about 12, because that was kind of my mom's passion. But I'm not gonna lie, I actually enjoyed doing it. I just loved being involved in sports. I wanted to always be active. I wanted to, play some kind of sport, do some kind of training. So even though it wasn't the best option for me, I still my mom really insisted on it, and I didn't really mind. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Then when I was 14 years old, we moved to Argentina. I was just from an immigrant family. Things in Russia in the 90s weren't that good. It was a very difficult period. Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s, and then the country was slowly going, not slowly, but very fast, going down an economical and just social and all kinds of slope. It was not, things were not getting better, even though Soviet Union already wasn't a great place, to live. Now, during the 90s, the country completely went into, we even call it the crazy 90s, in Russia, because there was just the crime rate was through the roof, people drinking, drug problems, all of that, average salary $50 a month, that kind of thing. So we decided to move away. We kind of didn't feel like, we felt that nothing could be worse than Russia, basically.
Yeah.
And but as a Russian citizen back in those days, it was very, very difficult to get a visa to go anywhere into like a sort of what you say, like a well-developed country like Canada or US or even, UK or Ireland. So we tried to get a Canadian visa, but we got refused. So we were just in Moscow, and we bought a newspaper saying like, look, we have to leave this place. Life is very difficult here. Where can we go? And there was an ad for Argentina, and we kind of, read it, got all the documents, applied for a visa, got the visas, and went. And so suddenly we were on a plane to Argentina. We didn't know any Spanish. Didn't really have any plan, to be honest. We just felt like, okay, nothing could be worse. We will figure it out. If we manage to make it here in Russia, we will definitely make it elsewhere. Now, little did we know things could get worse, and things can be worse in other places, because suddenly we ended up in a country that economically was just as bad as Russia in the 90s, but we also didn't have any, we didn't know anybody, we had no contacts, we had no language, and we had no money, and we had no apartment, we didn't know any property, we had nothing. I remember we had about like $1,000 of money with us, and we rented a little hotel room, but you just call it the hotel room. It was actually just a room, no windows. The kitchen was shared between 50 people. Toilets were shared between 50 people. You know, it was just kind of like a communal hotel, I guess you can call it, but not much of a hotel, if I'm honest. Couldn't even give it any stars. And so I remember we were kind of like sitting, and my mom sat down. She, you know, just started crying, you know, because she realized what she had done. She brought me and my stepdad Sergey at the time, you know, to this place, and she realized that we might not be able to make it here. You know, things are going to be very difficult here. And her initial thought was, okay, we have enough money for one ticket back. I was 14 years at the time, and my mom says, right, you're going to go back. I'm going to send you back to Russia, and you're going to live with your grandma. Now, that meant two things. Well, one, okay, I obviously didn't want to be separated from my parents, you know, but number two would mean that herself and my stepdad would have no money left whatsoever in this new country, you know, that they don't know if they'll be able to find a job or anything like that. So after kind of a little family negotiation, I guess you could say, we decided that we're going to try and make it there. We're going to try and find a job. We're going to stay there. So we opened up a dictionary that we brought with us, Russian-Spanish dictionary. We looked up 3 words, I look job. And the 3 of us just went from, we would leave 8 in the morning and we wouldn't come back till 8 in the evening. And we just walked throughout Buenos Aires and we would knock on every single door, whether it was hotel, whether it was a restaurant, whether it was a shop, petrol station, did not matter. Any business, type of business we saw, we walked in and we said those 3 words, I look job, in search of any kind of job. And we've done this day after day, week after week, just non-stop, walking, you know, from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening. We would only come back, have some lunch, and then go back walking again. I've never walked so much in my life. Buenos Aires is a big ass place, and we just walked and walked and walked and walked. And now we got a little bit lucky. I mean, a bit of luck always plays a part. Of course, persistence played a big part, but a bit of luck, you have to have a little bit of luck, and that's what happened. And the luck was that my stepdad, back in Russia, he was always a truck driver, and he is one of those truck drivers that was very passionate about his job, to the point that he loved his car almost more than the family. And he would never let anyone fix the car. He would always be fixing his car himself. He wouldn't let nobody near it, no mechanic, nobody. No matter how difficult the task was, he would always fix it himself. And what that meant was that he became a very good mechanic as well as a driver. And to be a mechanic in a new place, you don't really need the language. We walked into this garage, we said the 3 words, I look job, and then the guy walked us over to the car and he started pointing at the car and sort of asking my stepdad, can you fix this? Like, and he'd point to an engine. We go, yeah. Can you fix this? Yeah. This? Yeah. Okay, start tomorrow. And so he started his work there, and sure enough, he was a very good mechanic. They straight away kept him there. They were happy with him, and then kind of our life got a little bit easier. At least we knew we'd be able to pay for our rent, we'd be able to pay our bills, we'd be able to provide, you know, have food and all that, so we would survive. But we very quickly realized that Argentina was a third world country, and that's not the reason why we left, you know, Russia. We left in search of a better life. You know, we were an immigrant family, people that were ready to work hard. We didn't want nothing given to us. We were ready to work hard, but we wanted to, you know, be rewarded for it appropriately. And I'm not talking like millions, nothing like that, just enough that you can pay, you know, for your food, that you can, you know, buy clothes and all that, just the basic needs. That's all we kind of wanted, really.
Yeah.
So we realized that Argentina is not a place to kind of stay there longer. Now, we ended up staying there for about 2 years, and there was many immigrants there, and the immigrants always talk among themselves. You know, they kind of plan how to get out of there, how to find a better, you know, life. So we always kind of, you know, helped each other in that way. Our initial plan was to get an Argentinian passport, and then back in the day with Argentinian passport, you didn't need a visa to go to the States. And so many went over there and then stayed there illegally and found work, and, you know, US is renowned for that.
Yeah.
I remember there was even a story, because many people were doing that. The immigration in US, became aware, obviously, that this is how people are getting into the country. So they would, even though there was no visa required, they would still be checking people, at the border. So what you would have to do is, in order to get into the country, you would have to buy a very expensive holiday. Mostly in Miami, people would buy like a 5-star resort and then fly over and then pretend you're going on this holiday and then just stay and never come back, basically. And a friend of ours, they got an Argentinian passport and they went over that way, and then they get, next thing, they had the most expensive hotel booked, everything nice, 5-star, driver picking them up, the whole lot. And then they get told at the border, like, no, we're gonna send you back. And they're going like, what's going on? Why is that? And they're saying, look, well, you booked the most expensive hotel, you have a driver picking you up, but why is in your suitcase, why have you got pots and pans in your fucking suitcase? And obviously, they were an immigrant family. They know they're going there to live, and they have very little money. So in order to save, whatever money they can, they thought, okay, we're going to need these things. So they decided to bring all that with them, and ended up getting caught and getting sent back to Argentina.
It's not something you take on holidays, pots and pans, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So, and obviously, U.S. immigration is so experienced. You're not going to fool them easy like that.
As
So,
a 14-year-old, like experiencing that at that time, Artem, what's your perspective going through all that with your parents and looking for work and looking for job? Obviously, you weren't in any type of schooling, or were you in schooling at that time? What's your
yeah,
out?
I was in school. I was in school in Argentina. I started school right away there, and I learned Spanish pretty quick. When you're at that age and you
Yeah,
just get put into an environment where you either speak Spanish or you don't speak at all, you learn very quickly. So I was able to learn Spanish. But in terms of my mindset and all, because we're going there as a family, we're going there to make it. So in my mindset, it was all normal. And also, like, thinking back on that, it might be a little bit like a crazy situation to be in when as a 14-year-old. But when you are in those situations, you're not the only one in those situations. You are surrounded by people that are in exactly the same situation as you are. So it feels normal, it feels somewhat normal. Like, well, they also in the same and they're in the same. And you even see people in a worse of situations than you, because there were many that were unable to find jobs in Argentina. Many people ended up living under the bridge, homeless, basically. I've seen many of people that I was friendly with, became homeless, and there was no opportunity to help them because no one had any money there. You just have barely enough to survive.
yeah,
So yeah, you're in that mindset. It's not an issue for you. You don't feel sorry for yourself, and you just get on with things.
yeah. Time to take action. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So from there, Artem, what was the next path? You stayed in Argentina for 2 years. He's didn't make the move to the States. No, what was the next
No,
move?
we did make, because we heard there was more and more stories like that, coming up, and we thought, okay, number one, it's extremely expensive to do that. Number two, there is a huge risk of getting caught, because the immigration was getting smarter and smarter. They were asking you where's your jobs, asking to show funds and all that, and many people don't have the funds to show. So then in all these conversations that we were having with all the other immigrants over there, who were like from all over the place, Ukraine, Russia, Armenia, Georgia, you name it. So then what came up was UK or Ireland. And some people are talking about UK, but UK was a difficult situation as well. The way you had to get into UK was basically you buy a flight from Argentina to Moscow through London. And back in those days, you would arrive into one airport, but your flight to Moscow was from a different airport. So what they would do is they'd put you on a bus, and the bus would take you to the next airport. And what you would do is, when you're on the bus, you'd come up to the driver and say, "Oh, sorry, I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling sick." So he would stop the bus, open the doors, and you just leg it and never come back. So again, you end up illegal, but you make it. It's not something you fear for. You come from difficult environment, so this is not something you're even afraid of. You're like, okay, that's what I have to do, no problem. But then the talk of Ireland came up. Ireland was experiencing a big economic boost. The Celtic Tiger, was
Yeah.
in full swing. They were literally telling us that, look, there's so many jobs there. They take anybody. So I thought, okay, we thought my stepdad is a great mechanic, he'll definitely be able to find job. Now this time we kind of learned the lesson of the first move to Argentina, and we didn't decide to go as a whole family. We sent him there first, just sort of to have a look, what it's like, are you able to find jobs? Is what people are telling, is that true? And so my stepdad went over first, and literally he immediately found a job, and he gave us the green light, and then me and my mom followed.
Brilliant. And what year was that, Artem? What age were you then when you landed in Ireland?
So it was summertime when I landed in Ireland, and I was 15, but just turning 16. So let's say we landed in July, and in August I turned 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, I remember even when we first came to Ireland, I was already a bit bigger, obviously 16. So I felt like, okay, I should probably get a job too. I'm of that age where I can start working. And I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna take the same approach as we did in Argentina. I'm gonna go into every door, knock on every door, and say, I'm looking for a job. I had a bit more English than Spanish,
Yeah.
because I learned it in school, in Russia and in Argentina. So I did that, and I remember I walked into the first place, the first pub, and they were like, "Yeah, can you start tomorrow?" And I was like, "What? You're gonna give me a job straight away?" Like, "Yeah, yeah, we need somebody to wash glasses. We need somebody to work." And I couldn't believe it. And I remember to this day, they gave me €6 an hour, and I could not believe my luck. I was like, €6 an hour. Oh my God! I thought I was fucking, I don't know, Bill Gates or something. I started counting because now you have to remember, during that time, my mom would have worked, let's say in Russia, or people in Russia would have been working for $50 a month.
Yeah.
Here they offered me €6 an hour. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I was like, oh my God, if I do 10 hours at 60, and if I do 100 hours at 600,
Yeah.
I just started, dreaming of all the things I could buy, and
Yeah.
how rich I'm going to be.
Perspective is a wonderful thing, isn't it? When you think on it, like €6 an hour, maybe somebody in Dublin or wherever was turning that down. Nah, I'm not working for that, but for somebody else, it's experienced something completely
I
different.
couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was robbing them. I was like,
Yeah.
"Geez, is this right?" Like, I was like, they must not be like thinking this true, like giving me that kind of money just to wash some fucking glasses.
Yeah.
Because I was ready to do the job for like €2 an hour, €1 an hour. Probably I would have been happy to do it.
Yeah.
€6. I'm like, oh my God, that's incredible.
And you moved to Dublin, Artem, is that right? Or when you moved to Ireland, was it straight into Dublin? Yeah.
No, it wasn't straight into Dublin actually. That time we lived well, first we lived in Bantry, County Cork. It was a
Okay.
very small town. My dad was working not far away there he was like fixing cars, but then because we saw that the town was very, very small, and obviously my mom wanted, for me to go to a good school, and just have more kids around and everything, we moved to Tralee then, and I lived in Tralee for a year. But then eventually we moved to, from there on, actually, we moved to Letterkenny in Donegal. My
Ah,
dad got a better job there, got a job offer there. We had some friends there, and they needed a car mechanic in a place called McDade's Garage in Donegal. So we moved over there, and then I lived there for about 2 years. And once I finished my living cert, I knew I wanted to go to college, and obviously Dublin was where the best colleges were. I got a place in DCU, and that's when I moved to Dublin to study business in DCU.
brilliant, man. So, in all that time, was there any type of training going on in terms of what you were doing physically? When did you get into combat sports? When did that kind of start, Artem?
Yeah, so all this time there was not really much. I did, like when I was in Argentina, I did a little bit of capoeira. I just kind of loved watching it, but only a couple of months. Nothing serious. Then in Ireland, I didn't train at all really. I was going like doing some like push-ups at home, and just kind of I was
Yeah.
always fit enough. I loved sports, but I didn't start training MMA until I was 21. I was already studying in DCU, and I just saw an ad. I saw a little poster on the wall in my college, saying, "Would you like to learn self-defense?" And there was a picture of two guys covered in blood. And I thought, oh, this is something I used to watch on TV as a kid. I used to love watching Oleg Taktarov in the UFC. He was a Russian bear, and I was a big fan. So I thought, oh, it's something I'd love to learn, something that I always wanted to do. My mom didn't let me. Now I'm 21. I don't need her permission. I've got the time, I have a bit of money, I can do it.
Yeah.
So I started training there, and the rest, as they say, is history. You know, I fell in love with it straight away and knew I wanted to compete, and that was it.
And was that obviously the poster, was that SBG or was it a club before that, Artem?
No, it was actually not SBG just yet. It was I used to train with a guy named Phil, uh, and he was renting a small room in a gym on Camden Street. The gym was called Raw, but it's still there. The gym Raw is still there, but it moved now. Back in those days, it was like in the back. It was kind of like behind Copperface Jacks or something. You know, it's kind of like in the mid between Camden Street and whatever street that is. Is it Leeson Street? Can't remember.
Yeah.
Haven't been out in a million years. So I can't remember what the name of the street is. But it was just at the back there, and he just had a tiny little room there. And I started training with him. And after about 2 weeks, I told him, "Look, Phil, I wanna fight MMA. You know, get me a fight." And he's like, "Man, you only train for 2 weeks. Just relax a little bit. You know, train a bit more." But I just wouldn't leave him alone. And he says to me one day, he says to me, "Look, Artem, I can see that you're very serious about this. You obviously want to fight." So he says, "Look, if you are serious about that, you have to train at SBG with John Kavanagh." And he told me about that club. He was just a blue belt under John. You know.
Yeah.
Blue belt in jiu-jitsu is like the very first belt you get.
Mm.
So he told me about John Kavanagh. I didn't go to John straight away because I was studying in college, and I ended up going on Erasmus to Germany for a year. But I kept training all along. When I was in Berlin, in Germany for a year, I trained at a place called Budokan. There was a very good coach there, Ulf. At the time, he was a brown belt. He's a black belt now. But I trained with him for a year, and when I came home back to Ireland, I knew straight away where I wanted to go. I came to SBG, John Kavanagh's gym, you know, and I remember still his sister, you know, used to work at reception, you know, and she asked me if I would like to trial. I said, "I don't want no trial. I'm ready. I'm ready to fight." And I remember she put me into like, there's this I guess like for new people that come in, it's like a class that kind of, I guess, assesses you a bit. It's like very, very beginnerish. And I remember I was like hating it. I was like, "No, I shouldn't be here. I want to be already with the top dogs, and I want to." Because I had trained a little bit at that time already, you know, and I was just, you know, pissed off about it. But you know, sure enough, I started training there, and very quickly, you know, I made my way up the ranks, and soon enough, I was on the pro team and training to be a fighter.
What was that initial experience when you went into the SPG? In terms, obviously, it's world famous now. But what was your initial experience when you went in? What was that experience like? Did you kind of know you felt at home nearly straight away when you went in there, or what was it like? Who stood out for you at that time when you were on the SPG? Also.
Oh yeah, it definitely stood out for me because you know, obviously at that time I had trained in some good places. My first coach, Phil, you know, I trained with him, and then in Germany the club was very, very good. So I knew, you know, I had some technique already. I had some knowledge already. I knew what it was like. I knew what to look out for, you know, and for me, it was all about effectiveness. You know, I went at the first class and I rolled with everybody. I trained with everybody. I felt the experience. I felt the technique. I felt that these guys were better than me. So that's how I knew that I'm in the right place, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how I knew it, you know.
And then your first pro fight then, Artem, was what, 2010, isn't that right? Pro in 2010, was it?
Yeah, I think so. 2010 or 2010. Yeah, I think it was 2010. That's right.
Yeah.
So I went. I started. When I started fighting, obviously my first fight was amateur. It was in Derry on a show called Chaos. Connor actually fought on the same show also.
Was that at the Millennium Forum?
No, that time it was in a hotel. I think it's Balmoral Hotel. I think it might be called. Because or maybe not.
Yeah, I seen Connor fight at the Millennium and the other Chaos show, the Millennium Forum.
Yeah, that was later on. Yeah. That was a later on show. But back those Chaos shows, that was like some of the first shows that they did, and it was in a hotel. Yet they had a smaller venue back then, and so in a hotel, I was like one of the first fights. I had an amateur fight, and Connor was the main event. He had a pro fight that same night. We both won the fight. There's a picture actually online with the three of us standing, me, Al, Duffy, and Connor with our medals. Oh, John as well with us, four of us. But yeah, so sorry, what we were saying again?
So that was your first.
Oh yeah, 2010. That's right, and that was my amateur fight. But I fell in I had that first fight, and I was like, man, this shit is for me. I want to do it. I felt alive in there. I want to do more. I didn't feel nerves, nothing, just excitement, pleasure, wanting to do it more, just euphoria, incredible. And I said straight away to John, I said, look, when is the next fight? When is the next fight? When? And that was, and so since that fight, within a 12-week period, I ended up having 3 amateur fights and I went pro straight away in a pro fight within 12 weeks. Just so you know, normally people have 3 fights a year. You know, 4 fights a year is already a lot. I've done 4 fights in 12 weeks. And I wanted to do more. There was just no other fights available. I was looking for more fights. I was asking John, get me fights. Who wants it? I don't care. Wait, who, when, what, where, how short the notice. Give me fights. I'm ready to go.
What was that
anytime.
drive? If you look back at that then, at that time, Artem, what do you feel that drive was? Was it just a love for the sport, or was there a drive there to like go bigger and make a name for yourself? What was that drive at that time, do you think?
I just love the sport. I never even thought at that time, I definitely didn't think that I could, that this could be my job, that this could pay my bills. There was no one around me that was able to do that. Any guys I knew that were even pro fighters, they weren't getting anything really. So I loved the sport. I was in love with the sport. I loved it so much that back like when I was still in college and training, I was in GCU and I was living right beside GCU. And obviously to get from DCU to SBG, which was along my road at the time, I would have had to get a bus and a Lewis or 2 buses, which would have been working out quite expensive, to go train, like whatever, €8 just to go train once, For a student, that was quite a lot. So I remember I had a bike. I bought this bike, the cheapest bike I could get for €50. It was fucking quite small bike, this mountain bike. And it was taking me about maybe 40 minutes to get to training from GCU and about an hour to come back because I would have been so tired. And I would always do like two training sessions in a row because it was such a long way off that I would cycle there for 40 minutes, do 2 sessions, which end up being 3 hours, and then an hour back. And I would be exhausted on the way back. I still remember I would be cycling on this bike and I would be coming up, I would be on Ballymoon Road, which is right beside my college already. So I'm nearly home after cycling for an hour, fucking rain pissing down on me, cars flying by me, splashing me with the water. And I was going up this tiny little hill. It's tiny hill when you're driving in a car. When you're cycling on a bike exhausted, it looked like fucking Mount Everest to me. It was enormous. And I see all these cars whizzing by me. And there was this sign, one of them signs that it's when you're going too fast, it says slow down in red. And if you're going at the right speed, it goes thank you. Yeah. So this is late at night and the roads are pretty empty. And some cars, every time a car goes past me, splashes me. And then I see the sign up, light up, slow down, slow down, slow down. And then when I finally managed to cycle up to the sign, it just goes on green. Thank you. To me. And I almost felt like the sign was fucking laughing at me. That I'm exhausted and barely fucking moving. He just goes, thank you. And I just remember it vividly, The guys that I was living with, I was sharing a house with 4 other guys. They couldn't understand. They're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, hold on a second. You're paying to train in this place. You're cycling there for an hour. You come back all exhausted, covered in dirt and rain. They couldn't understand me. But to me, it was nothing. What? Cycle fucking an hour there and an hour back in the rain? No problem. The fire was burning in my chest. There was nothing else I could think of. I just wanted to train. I wanted to take part in that. And that's it. It didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like effort. It felt like pleasure.
Yeah, inspiration. And you're just doing something that you love and you can feel that.
Exactly.
And could you see that obviously then that transfers into SBG in terms of yourself and obviously Connor and all the other guys as well too? That inspiration, that fire, that desire, that obviously feeds off into the rest of the fighters in SBG. At that time when you're starting to come up and go into the pro ranks, like they give people a bit of a insight, like what's that like in the club? What's that energy like? Is there, like, obviously Connor has his sights set in UFC and becoming who he is now. Like, what's that like to be in and around in terms of that atmosphere, training, fighting?
It was great. It was incredible because everybody was like that. We had a small team, very small team at the time, but it was a very close team. And Everyone was very, very motivated. Everyone was going for it. We were doing crazy things. We were doing a lot of sparring, maybe too much sparring. We were, because there wasn't that many of us. You end up sparring fucking middleweights, light heavyweights. It didn't matter. We all mixed in together. There
Yeah.
was no, because you could know I'm going to choose this training partner. There was no one to choose from. Sometimes I'd show up and it's just me, Kyle, Chris, and maybe Connor. It's four of us. So they are massive guys. Middleweight and welterweight, and absolutely huge guys. So we end up sparring them. That was just what we did, and it was incredible to be a part of that. That was it was a great, great feeling, and it felt like we stood out from the rest of the clubs, and the results spoke for themselves. And we felt unstoppable. Once I was part of that group, then it kind of became apparent that yes, we were going to make it. We were going to get into the UFC. When we were going to be good enough to compete at that level.
Yeah,
it was incredible. It was incredible team we had back then.
Fast forward then, Artem, to that chance. It's the Ultimate Fighter, isn't that right? You were in the prelims first, then you get brought back. The coaches were allowed to bring back a fighter, and you got the final. What's that experience like?
Yeah, so that obviously was scripted. They bring back a fighter. So what happened was, I usually don't really like talking about my. I've never, not just don't like talking about, but I've never, out of all the fights that I've lost or won, many times, because I've never, pulled out of a fight. I've never not turned up to a fight. Once it's agreed to, I've always been there. So as a result, in order to facilitate that, I end up fighting many times, with injuries, with sick, to the point where I could barely get out of bed. But I have never, ever said which fight it was, because I never like to give an excuse, and I always hear people say, oh, no excuses, but my leg was broken or my ass was sore or something else. To me, no excuses is no excuses. You just say nothing. You shake the guns, whether win, lose, or draw. You shake your opponent's hand, you thank him for the competition, and you go home. And that's what I've always done. But this fight, my first fight to get into the Ultimate Fighter house, is the only one where I kind of tell the story of what actually happened. And it's not as an excuse. I just think it's a bit of a funny story. And, I'm retired now, so that's the only one I ever talked about before. And I'm going to tell you now again the story of what happened. So that fight happened, I think, 4 or 5 days after Conor had won his first ever belt against Mendes, his first ever UFC belt against Chad Mendes. Yeah. And that whole camp has been so emotional for the whole team and for me personally, because Conor, like 14 weeks before the fight, Conor had re-injured his ACL, the leg that he had surgery on previously. And he had ruptured it fully for the second time. And it happened while I was with him on the world tour. There was just two of us. So I felt like it was my responsibility to look after him, make sure, I was there to kind of help him train and help him get ready. And while I was there, he got injured like this, and I thought he was not going to be able to make the fight. God knows if he was able to fight again. I was there when the phone rang and we were speaking. Two of us were talking to his doctor, Professor Elitrash in LA. And he said to Conor, forget about this fight in 14 weeks. There's no way you can make that. We need another surgery. And, it's another year recovery, if even maybe more. And I remember Conor saying, not a fucking chance. I am fighting. Just put the phone down. And that was it, So it was very emotional. We went, like most of the camp was spent in the physio room. He didn't even fucking do a proper training camp. He was just recovering, nursing the knee, nursing his ACL the whole camp. Then the opponent got switched because we were hoping, okay, it's going to be Jose Aldo. It's going to be a stand-up fight. We can somehow make the fight. Didn't wrestle pretty much the whole camp. Didn't grapple. Then opponent gets switched with weeks before the fight. So we're trying to do a bit of grappling, a little bit of wrestling. His other, leg goes, ligaments in other leg pop. Not as serious as the ACL, but still, when the guy was already on one leg and now the only good leg goes. So it was so emotional that when he finally won this belt, I was literally like nearly fucking tears in my eyes. And at the after party, I was so emotional, and I knew I had to fucking fight in a few days. But I remember me and John sitting, and John says, look, let's just have one. I'll just have one. And that's the last thing I remember. I said I'll just have one. I had one, and the emotion and everything just got the better of me. Long story short, I ended up fucking partying for 3 days straight. You know, we're partying all night. Then fucking it's a beach party or pool party in the day. Back into the fucking nightclub, back into the beach, and then I get told, okay, Artem, you have to fight now in a few days. So first you have to make weight. So I'm like this and all in bits, after all this partying and everything, not feeling great at all. Somehow I make fucking weight. Luckily, I was fighting at the weight class above, that I normally fight at, so that made it a bit easier. Uh, and yeah, I went into the fight and I lost a split decision. So I was all disappointed, obviously, but I was like, fuck, I went partying, but I couldn't not celebrate because the victory was so emotional, so meaningful for me.
Yeah.
That I was like, fuck, I have to celebrate, and ended up kind of paying for it in the fight. And I was all disappointed, all upset, obviously thinking, all right, this was my chance and I blew it. But sure enough, Conor was the star of the show, and they changed the script a little bit and put me back in. But in my defense, I would like to say is number one is, okay, whatever they drinking and all this, yes, that's on me. But having said that, the fight, they could have given me, and they have done this in the past. Whenever there was like a guy, let's say somebody like one of the coaches is a big star, like John Jones or somebody else, and he has one of his boys in the show, they usually kind of put them in there, because they obviously want me in there. They want the better show, better TV rating, better everything. So they wanted me in there, and they could have given me, a slightly easier, but opponent. But they actually end up giving me like the top seed, Mehdi Baghdad, the guy who was legit lightweight, because this was done at lightweight, and often when guys compete at in the Ultimate Fighter show, because of the weight cuts, they do it at the weight class above. So me, for example, I'm normally featherweight, but I was competing at lightweight. So they could have given me another guy that was also a featherweight, let's say, but just competing at lightweight. But no, they gave me a legit lightweight guy who was fucking huge, even competed at welterweight down the line. He was an RFA champion in the US, which for anybody that knows RFA is like one of the top series for the UFC. Anybody that becomes a champion in that promotion straight away goes into the UFC. He was an extremely strong striker. He had won like very big tournaments in K1, so he was like a legit fighter. He was Anderson Silva's sparring partner, like extremely tough fight. And I don't mind that. I love that. This is kind of my attitude. I always fight the tougher guys,
Yeah.
So, but in this situation, the way obviously the show was going, I for some reason in my head, I thought that they were going to give me a handy one that I will just be able to kind of beat and get into the house. So that was also part of the reason why I ended up kind of having a few drinks at the after party. In my head, I was like, it's going to be, easy enough fight probably. They want me in that house, for sure. But that was not the story. So I ended up losing a split decision. And the thing about the Ultimate Fighter fights is because they're considered exhibition fights, now everything is exactly the same about them, except that you're only doing 2 rounds.
Yeah.
And sometimes they make you go into the 3rd round when the fight is undecisive. And I felt that my fight should have gone into the 3rd round. And Dana felt that it should have gone into the 3rd round. And it should have. The judges felt that as well, because the fight was a split decision. So I guess, that's sort of my excuse for getting brought back in. It was a split decision fight. Again, it's a top guy, and when I got put back into the house, I was like, right, I'm not fucking about here no more. I have to prove my worth here, and I have to show these boys what's up. Because of course I was getting a little bit of bad looks in the house. You're Conor's boy, that's why you were here, you shouldn't have been here. So I had to put these boys back in their place and show them what's up. And I sure did. Knockout after knockout after knockout. 3 knockouts in a row. And not only that, my last knockout, Julian Erosa, he had previously beat Mehdi Baghdad, the guy that I lost to into the house. I was hoping that Mehdi would beat him and I would ask for my rematch and show them what I really can do in there. But unfortunately, Mehdi ended up losing. So I was like, okay, what's the next best thing? I have to beat the guy that Mehdi lost to. And Mehdi lost to him by split decision. And I knocked him out within a minute, So I guess that kind of, showed and proved that, look, I belong in there.
Yeah, you felt redeemed, yeah.
I definitely felt redeemed. And on top of that, I ended up being only, like the show ran for about 15, 20 years. And there's like many seasons. And of all the seasons of all the Ultimate Fighters that ever ran, there's only ever been 3 fighters that finished all fights by knockout. It's myself, Uriah Hall, and Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
So, it was a good club to be part of, so I definitely felt redeemed and definitely felt like I proved myself,
Yeah.
And as well, on top of that, the guys that I've knocked out in the house, other fighters from my team ended up fighting them down the line and end up losing to them even,
Yeah.
So that kind of once again proved to me that, yeah, I definitely belonged in there. And I definitely, that wasn't just a handout. Yeah, it was a bit of luck. Definitely, I got special treatment, but I guess I proved my worth and I proved that I belong in that house by knocking all the guys out.
Yeah, 100%. So even just to kind of like you run that house together, what's that environment like?
Incredible.
Is it good?
Incredible.
Yeah.
It is honestly some of the best times of my life. I can honestly say that. It is just incredible. You don't have TV there, you have no phone, no distractions. The food is being brought to you. You've got a beautiful house with like swimming pool, jacuzzi, uh, pool table, table tennis, darts, anything you can ask for, any food you can ask for, you get it all. You get driven to training twice a day. You have massage therapist, you have physio. All you do is train and fight. It is just incredible. Honestly, if I had an opportunity to live in that house, I'd live there forever. No problem. I just train, eat, drink, sleep, and fight every weekend.
Was there
It was honestly,
any conflict between you and the guys, or was it did you get on well together, or what's that like?
yeah, we got on great, to be honest. And as well, because this was Team Europe versus Team USA, and a lot of the European guys I knew, I actually fought 2 of the guys previously because back in the day, when I was first starting my career, I was known as the prospect killer because I hated guys that like would pad their record or anybody that was like a breakout star that people would be talking about. I asked to fight that guy right away. Like, right, give me that fight. I'd be calling this guy out. So basically, if you're a top guy in, at the time when I was around in Europe, we probably fought. If we hadn't fought, chances are I asked to fight you and you just didn't accept the fight.
Yeah.
So this was another thing, when they took all the best European fighters and put us in the house, 2 of the guys ended up being the guys that I had previously faced, who was Saul Rogers and Martin Svensson. And they were like, Saul Rogers was the top guy from the UK. Martin Svensson was the #1 featherweight in Sweden at the time when I fought him. So yeah, I ended up already knowing some of the guys. So we had great fun in the house. But to be honest, even the American team was good. We didn't really have any bad blood or anything. We just enjoyed our time in there, and we settled all our differences in the cage. And the rest of the time we just had fun. The Americans actually had started fighting with each other a little bit because the European guys won all the first fights, and the way it works in the Ultimate Fighter, when you lose your fight there, then you stay in the house, but you're not progressing the competition. That's it. You're out of competition. So as a result, they start drinking, having a few drinks. Because you're in the house, you're not gonna fight. So what else are you gonna do? You have all this drink around you, all the food, do whatever you want. So they start, having a few drinks every now and again, and yourself what drinking leads to violence. So one of the nights, I remember they got into a bit of a scuffle, but not really. They didn't really get physical. They threw a bit of ketchup on each other, and that was really it. We broke them up, but that's it. So no harm done. It was overall it was a great experience.
Sounds like it, man. Where did the Russian Hammer come from? Who gave you the nickname?
It was actually Peter Quille. And at the start, I didn't like the fight name at all. I didn't like Russian Hammer, and I was really fighting against it. But what he did, he was anytime somebody asked about me in an interview or something, he would say, "Oh yeah," they would say, "How was Artem?" or something. Say, "Oh, you mean the Russian Hammer?" He would just keep forcing it and forcing it and forcing it, and sure enough, then all the journalists, it stuck, and they started asking me, "Oh, we're speaking here with Artem Lobov, the Russian Hammer. What Russian Hammer? What? When did I become the Russian Hammer?" And he literally single-handedly forced the fight name on me. So yeah, it was Peter Quille.
Yeah. So fast forward from there, then Artem coming out of the Ultimate Fighter, the house, and then UFC, and then you made the decision then to leave the UFC and go into bare knuckle. Was that a tough decision, easy decision for you? What was going on at that time?
It was an easy decision for me at the time. My girlfriend was pregnant at the time, and I knew that I have to like provide for the family. And bare knuckle have offered me a massive contract compared to what I was on in the UFC. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm thankful to the UFC, and the reason I was offered that big contract in bare knuckle was because of UFC,
Yeah.
because of the profile they allowed me to build, and uh, so as a but at that time it was a no-brainer. The contract was so big; it was like a six-figure contract that they offered me. I knew that by fighting for them, I would be able to, sort all my financial issues and troubles. So I just messaged them and said, look, guys, thank you very much for everything. I love being a UFC fighter. It's an incredible place. You really feel taken care of. You really feel like you're part of this massive company where everything runs very, very smooth, where everybody's in their place, everybody knows their place, everybody knows their job. You always see the same people over the years. They're experts at what they do, and it's incredible to be part of that. You never feel out of place, you never feel lost, you never feel not knowing what to do. Everything is taken care of, and it was great. But my situation was that the baby was on the way, and I had to provide for the family, so I left and went into bare knuckle.
What was especially with the misses? Was there a like, what are you doing going to bare knuckle? Is it dangerous? What's your obviously you've been a bare knuckle fighter and a UFC fighter and mixed martial artist. For people that are looking in, ultimately they're going to think it's even more dangerous as a bare knuckle. Do you think that it's safer, or is it just kind of similar in terms of bare knuckle fighting? And
Yeah, I think people probably think that bare knuckle is less safe. It's probably more dangerous
yeah,
because of the visual, effects that it has. But if you actually break it down and kind of go into it a little bit and realize what it's like, I wouldn't say it's more dangerous than boxing or MMA. In fact, I probably would even lean towards saying that it's less dangerous
time.
for a number of reasons. Number one is time. You
Yeah.
only fight 10 minutes, right? So 5 2-minute rounds.
Mm.
That you can, in boxing, for example, you fight for 36 minutes. In MMA, you fight for 25 minutes, 15 or 25 minutes. And you know what I mean? You can do a lot more damage in 36 minutes than you can in 10 minutes. And then also you have to consider when you're fighting for that long, you have to consider things like dehydration. Dehydration sets in your brain, which is already it has very little protection. When you're dehydrated, it has even less protection.
Yeah.
And you see that as a result. Anytime you see a death in boxing, more often than not, the death happens in the later rounds, after round 8. Sometimes it happens in the early rounds as well, but more often than not, it's in the later rounds.
Mm.
Also, then if you look at UFC or MMA, yeah, bare knuckle is bad, but getting hit with a bare elbow or bare knee or bare shin to your head,
Yeah.
that's probably worse than the bare knuckle. Hands themselves are not really designed for damage.
Mm.
Hands are more so you can pick something up and do damage with that. But the hand itself, there's too many little bones in it.
Yeah.
It breaks too easy. It's not that good for doing damage. Elbow is a much better tool. Knee is a much better tool. Shin is a much better tool to do damage.
Yeah.
Even probably your forehead is probably a better tool to do more damage than your hand. So in that sense, it's but look, all of them are dangerous. Your brain is not designed to be hit.
Of
Your
course.
face is not designed to be hit. Our face is very fragile. The bones in our face break quite easily.
Yeah.
So ribs, and all of us, we're not really designed for that. If you look at evolution, with how we end up here, how did we evolve? You see danger, don't fucking go towards it. Don't go there. Go get a weapon or get more people and then go back. Or just run away. And here you are, suddenly, trying to override your brain and force yourself into this dangerous situation.
Yeah, 100%. And I watched the fight with Malinaji. I suppose for yourself, is there still any beef there in terms of your camp, even with Connor, etc.? or has that kind of been solved like for yourself and Malignaggi?
No, to be honest, no, there's no really beef any, I mean, what was there to beef now? I got the win and I got well paid. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? That's it. That's all I wanted from that one. I got
yeah,
the win and I got the money. That's it. See you later, guys.
yeah, of course. So then moving on from that, Artem, you made the decision then to retire. Obviously, that's a hard decision for yourself. Yeah, to do that.
Yeah, it was a hard and obviously hard that, because it's something that's been a big part of my life and something I was very passionate about. But at the same time, I've had so many real fights, that I feel content. I feel it's been enough for me, because if you look at many other guys, especially in boxing, they fight all their life, they pad the record, so all this fake fights, so they can get a payday down the line, and when you're doing this, not real fights is one thing, but when you're consistently fighting really, really tough battles,
Yeah,
battle after battle after battle, number one, it gives you all the answers you want to know. Number two, it's very like it wears on you. You know what I mean? It puts a lot more miles on the clock. It's sort of, imagine if you sailing your boat on a flat lake versus sailing your boat in the raw fucking seas every day. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's a whole different story. And I've been sailing my boats in the roughest of seas fucking ever. You
yeah,
know, uh, a lot of the times those seas that nobody else wanted to go into, I got my fucking blow up little boat and said, fuck you, so I'm going in. So in that sense, I'm content and I know I'm not gonna go back. I'm not gonna be one of those guys that, oh fucking yeah, come back now, fight, come back again.
yeah,
The reason they do that is because, like I said, they pad the record. Let's say not all of them, of course, but many guys this is the reason for their comebacks. They pad the record on time, so they don't really get enough of the answers. Then they take a tough fight, let's say, and they lose that, and that's it. Then they retire because there's no opportunity in boxing. If you have a loss in boxing, that's basically you can pack your bags and go, because for you to turn that around and get a payday and get big opportunity again is going to be near impossible. So
yeah,
many as a result pack it in. But of course they're sitting at home going, oh fuck, maybe things just didn't go my way, or maybe this or that. They still have all these questions that haven't been answered. I don't have that. I've answered all my questions. I went in there and I took on the best guys each and every single time. And I won some, I lost some, but I got all my answers. And yeah, of course, I'm a bit sad and I didn't get to achieve some of the things that I hoped to achieve. But I also achieved some of the things I never dreamed of achieving. So I'm
yeah.
content in that sense.
What are you? I suppose you're watching as well too the YouTube fights. What's your opinion on that? Are you enjoying those and seeing those? Obviously, it's
Look,
a good bit.
to me, if there's a market for it, if people are tuning in, well, then why not? You know what I mean? Nobody is forcing you to watch them. It's certainly, putting a lot of attention on boxing, because those cards, yes, there's the YouTubers fighting, but a lot of the times those cards also have some very, very high level boxers fighting on them, and
Yeah,
it's putting more eyes on them. And look, I see everybody complaining about these YouTube fights. I was recently watching Tiernan Bradley fight. He was fighting in Belgium, and I bought the pay-per-view. And it was one of those pay-per-views where you're watching it online, and it's showing you how many people are watching as well. And there was 12 of us watching the fucking fight.
yeah,
12 people. So here you go. There is some proper boxing for you. Why aren't you paying for that, motherfuckers?
yeah,
Why aren't you tuning into that? Because you know what's gonna stop promoters putting all these fake YouTuber fights is you not watching them and watching the real fights. But
yeah,
the reason they put on these fights is because you motherfuckers are not watching the real fights. 12 people were tuned in.
yeah.
12. You
Shocking.
know what I mean? And there's millions watching the other fights. So, you know what I mean? Wherever the demand is, that's where the supply is. Demand dictates supply.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
100%. Obviously, you're close mates with Connor. Artem, where's his head at now in terms of coming back after that injury and coming back in general? Like, do you see him like mounting a full comeback again and getting back into it properly? Is that where he's thinking?
Absolutely sure. Connor is a warrior. Like he came back from tougher even things before, like the ACL injury. Like I said, he done his ACL, got the surgery, was out for a year, had just recovered, and done his ACL again, and had the strength and ability, balls and heart to come back, without even getting the fucking surgery, done that time. That was crazy, you know what I mean? He's a warrior spirit, bulletproof mind. So I have no doubt he will come back. It's whatever he wants to do. If he truly wants it and he sets his mind to it, no question he'll be back.
Yeah, fantastic. Artem, one last question. If you were to go back and speak to that 14-year-old who was running around Argentina, looking for work, kind of in that place where you didn't know where your life was going to pan out, like, what would you go back and say to him?
Jesus, it's a tough one because like I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but those mistakes have proven to be very valuable life lessons. So I don't think there was much I would change, and also you never really want to go about changing things, because you don't know how that's going to play out then. Sometimes you might not make a certain mistake at a certain place, but it will end up meaning that you will make that same type of mistake, but at a later point where it means more and you're going to end up losing more as a result. So I probably wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't even tell him that that's me from the future. I would just say, "You're all right, kid. Keep going. It's all
Yeah,
good." And that's
fantastic.
it.
It's great. There's a great saying, everything is on the way, not in the way. And you're right. Everything that you went through molded you and helped you in your experience as a fighter and the success.
100%.
Yeah. Artem, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast and have a chat this morning.
Thank you so much, Seamus. Really enjoyed this.
Excellent, Artem. Speak soon.
Thanks a million.
Bye.
Bye bye.